Hi everyone, it's Professor Clark, and in this lecture we are going to go over some of the most common prefixes for verbs of motion. Not all of the ones you see in this chapter, but we're going to start here with the most common ones. By far the most common and most important prefixes for verbs of motion are the pair pri and u. And as I mentioned in the previous lecture, many of these prefixes are paired, and pri and u are paired. So when we use pri with a verb of motion, that indicates arrival. And when we want to say that we are arriving to a certain place, we use va or na plus the accusative. Or if we're arriving at a certain person's house or office or whatever, we use ka plus dative. So we can say, for instance, Я приехал в Москву вчера. I arrived in Moscow yesterday. Or к нам приехали гости. Guests came over to visit us. Notice we have va plus accusative for Moscow, for a place, and ka plus dative for us, for people. The opposite of pri is u, which indicates departure when attached to a verb of motion. And it is going to be used with is or sa plus genitive to indicate that you're departing from a place, and от plus genitive to indicate departing from a person. For instance, мы уехали из Москвы. We left Moscow. We departed from Moscow. Or муж ушел от меня. And that construction means my husband left me, as in we split up. He left me. But notice here that we have is plus genitive for Moscow, an enclosed space, and от plus genitive for меня, for a person. The next most common pairing is v and v. And v with a verb of motion indicates entering an enclosed space. It means entrance. And it's pretty much always going to be used with v plus accusative because you're pretty much always going to use it to indicate entering an enclosed space. For instance, Katya вошла в комнату. Katya entered the room. Or Zhenya въехал в гараж. Zhenya drove into the garage. Both cases, we have v plus accusative. And note that vashla has that v or because v ends in a consonant. V is a consonant, and so we have to add or before et. And then with yechet, we have v hard sign because we have to add that hard sign before yechet or yijats with v. The opposite of v is v, and that indicates exiting an enclosed space. And you're pretty much always going to use it with is plus the genitive because it's pretty much always going to be used to indicate exiting an enclosed space, so is plus genitive. For instance, Katya вышла из комнаты. Katya exited the room. Katya left the room. Zhenya выехал из гаража. Zhenya drove out of the garage, or Zhenya exited the garage. And note also the stress. Remember that when you have the prefix v with a perfective verb, the stress is always going to be on the v. So Katya вышла, Zhenya выехал. And as a side note, if you want to indicate the exact time of departure, you're going to use a v verb. For example, мы вылетели в 5 часов. We took off, we left at 5 o'clock. A prefix with a very specific meaning that is nonetheless used quite commonly is do. And do, as always, means motion up to a specific goal or destination. So anytime you see the prefix do with pretty much any verb, it's going to indicate reaching a specific goal or destination. For example, дописать is to finish writing something, to write something to the end. Дочитать is to finish reading something or read something to the end. And it has the same meaning with verbs of motion. So дойти is to walk up to some specific goal that you're trying to reach. And we use it with do plus genitive. And we can say things like, for example, мы доехали до станции Театральная. We got to theater station. We rode all the way to theater station. Or надо дойти до угла и повернуть налево. You need to go to the corner and turn left. Or до университета не довезете. Will you take me to the university? And you could say this to a taxi driver, for example, if you need to take a taxi to campus. And note The usage of the negated verb, this is a polite construction in Russian where you say, won't you do something? And it's a polite request to ask, will you do something for me? So, do университета не довезете means, can you take me to campus? And finally, we have pro. And pro with a verb of motion indicates motion past or through something. It normally indicates that with almost any verb, but the meaning is particularly strong with verbs of motion. And it can mean to get to a place, like to make it to a place. So we could say things like, «Вы не подскажете, как пройти в библиотеку?» Could you tell me how to get to the library? And note again, we have this negated verb as part of a polite request. Вы не подскажете means can you tell me, but it literally means won't you tell me. Как пройти в библиотеку? How to get to the library or how to make it to the library. We can also use it with mimo plus the genitive to mean passing by something. For instance, надо пройти мимо школы. You need to walk by the school or you need to walk past the school. We can also use it with через plus the accusative to mean to go through something. For instance, надо пройти через тоннель. You need to go through the tunnel. You can also use it with по plus dative to mean to go down a street. For instance, надо пройти по Тверской улице и потом повернуть направо. You need to go down Tverskaya Street and then take a right. And пройти can also have this meaning of to go through or over something in a metaphorical sense. For example, мы прошли весь материал в учебнике. We went over all the material in the textbook. So those are the most common and most important prefixes for verbs of motion. Later in the chapter, we are going to go over some slightly less common but still important ones. But this is plenty to be getting on with now. If it seems like a lot, remember you can just go over them again and try to learn them one little piece at a time. And of course, the best thing is always to do lots of reading. So go through the exercises and the readings in the chapter and see if seeing the words used in context helps them make more sense to you.